Have you ever witnessed someone say, "If you don't like it, leave," and then everyone actually left? What's the story? Story 1. My great-grandmother is notorious for being a mean old bitch. It was Thanksgiving at her house, and much of the extended family was there. She started harping on my mom's cousin for something, like she always does, and my mom's cousin said, "Grandma, can't we just have a nice dinner for once?" Great-grandma responded, "If you don't like it, leave." And with that, every last cousin, aunt, uncle, and all of their food disappeared to my aunt's house. Story 2. When I was a kid, I stayed at a friend's house for the weekend. My friend's mother was one of those parents who required their kids to eat everything on their plate at the dinner table, come hell or high water. I had been served way too much food and said that I couldn't eat it all. The mother told me, "You can either finish your food or leave the table." So, I promptly left the table. This completely blew the minds of my friend and his siblings. It had never occurred to them that leaving the table was actually a viable option. When my mother picked me up the next day, my friend's mother told her what had happened and called me the rudest little boy. I think my mother was actually quite proud of me. Story 3. A former industrial job I had once held said that during an all-hands meeting, we were understaffed, underpaid, and overworked, and everyone knew it. Instead of the standard 2-to-1 ratio of 2 machines per operator for safety reasons, we were handling 4, 6, even 8 machines because people were getting paid less than most retail jobs to bust their asses in some of the most disgusting work I've ever done. You'd come home covered in moldy coolant, metal shavings, and stink. Machines started breaking down because they never shut them down for maintenance, leading to massive problems, which, of course, meant even more overtime to compensate for the broken machines. People started quitting. Management's response? They told us they expected us to work harder because they couldn't get more help. One of my coworkers, who generally gave no fucks, asked, right in front of everyone, why they didn't try raising the pitiful wages to attract more workers. The response? "We're not having that conversation right now. If you don't like it, you can quit." Who, buddy? Was that the wrong thing to say? As soon as word got out to the other shifts, what can only be called a mass exodus began. We lost half of each shift within the week. I stuck around for a few more weeks until I had a scheduling conflict with my schooling. One of my classes ended 30 minutes before my shift started, and the commute was also 30 minutes, meaning I might be a few minutes late once a week. Maybe. I gave them advance notice, and their response? "You need to decide what's more important, your school or your job." So I quit, and giggled my ass off at the sign in the HR office that said we had an almost 80% turnover rate. Never did find out what happened to that hellhole, but I can't imagine it was anything good after losing that many people. The poor HR rep looked completely done with everything and seemed so apologetic as she took my badge. Story 4. Not exactly, but my sister had a habit of picking fights with people, and when things weren't going her way, she'd tell them she was removing them from her life. She did it to boyfriends, longtime friends, sorority sisters. She even did it to me twice. The first time, I just rolled my eyes because she's younger than me. But the second time, she told me, "I'm removing you from my life. You're toxic." She unfriended me and told our family that I was toxic. In reality, I simply refused to let her be toxic, selfish, and under the influence of whatever she was on, especially around me, my spouse, or my kids. When she decided to threaten us, I decided I was done. As usual, after a few weeks, she came back around and tried to pretend she had never said those things. I didn't respond. She then claimed it was all a joke and insisted she had a right to be in my kids' lives. I haven't spoken to her in 2 years. Honestly, I don't miss her drama. Cutting her off was the best decision for my family. It made me realize just how deep the generational dysfunction ran in my family, how everyone was expected to overlook bad behavior and people please for the sake of keeping the peace. I decided that I didn't want my kids to repeat that cycle. I vowed to always put them first. I'm not exactly popular in my family right now, but I've never been happier. This was the first year I got to enjoy the holidays without panic attacks or dread. When someone walks out of your life, let them. Story 5. Yes, or pretty close to it. I was a founding member and treasurer of a skydiving society at my university in Aberystwyth. I'm teetotal, but I still went out on the weekly social nights which, in Aberystwyth, just meant spending time in local bars and pubs since there wasn't much else to do at night. I was well liked in the club because I owned a car, so I gave people lifts to the drop zone. I was always the designated driver, aka the nanny on nights out, and my house was close to the nearest drop zone, 4 hours away, just south of Birmingham, where I occasionally let the club crash. One night, we went to one of our usual spots, Lord Beeching's. This time, the owner was behind the bar, alongside one other staff member who looked rather glum, and he was in a foul mood. All 25 of us ordered drinks. He served 23 of us, then suddenly decided to ID my friend. Even though he was clearly over 18, a student, a regular, and was with 24 other students, the other staff member even vouched for him. But the owner insisted he walk all the way back to his halls to get his passport before he'd serve him. This was already rubbing the club the wrong way, but we all understood that pubs had to be careful about restrictions, so we let it slide. Then, I asked for a glass of water, which he was legally required to provide, I might add. His response? I'm not muddying my glasses for some prick who isn't paying. I just raised my eyebrows, completely caught off guard. I had never encountered such a bizarre reaction to a simple request for water. After a moment, realizing he wasn't joking, I turned to the room of 24 other people, swirled my finger in the air, and shouted, "Skydiving club, drink up. This asshole won't serve me, so we're leaving." Everybody downed their drinks immediately, and we all walked out. The skydiving club never went back while I was a member, and after I spread the story around, plenty of others avoided it too. Story 6. It was a typical 80s teenage house party. I don't even remember how we ended up at this guy's house. I only knew him by name from school, and we had never hung out before. There was a pony keg and about 15 people there. So far, so good. At some point, someone asked the guy if he had any music. He just shrugged and said, "Maybe later. First we have to get in the right minds." Then he left the room and came back with a Crown Royal bag. Everyone assumed he was about to twist up a joint, cool with us. But instead, he pulled out a huge bag of cocaine and started lining it up in front of us without saying a word. Now, I was fine with a little weed, and I wouldn't have cared if someone was doing coke discreetly in a back room, but I had never done it myself and was definitely not cool with someone whipping out that much in the open. I politely said, "Hey man, that's more of a backroom thing." A couple of others around me said something similar, and you could feel the whole vibe shift. The guy noticed that everyone was uncomfortable, but still doubled down. "It's my house. If you don't like it, you can leave." I'll never forget how quietly and orderly everyone proceeded to leave. I guess only 2 or 3 people stayed behind. It was awesome. Story 7. Had a teacher nobody liked who pulled the classic, "If you don't want to behave, you can leave my classroom," on a classmate. The whole class got up and left. Things have been going downhill in this class ever since he started teaching us. The main issue? He was a terrible teacher. He either had no real knowledge of his own subject, history, or was just incredibly bad at explaining it. We had no respect for him, and he tried to keep us in line by being ridiculously strict in the most unfair ways. He wouldn't let anyone ask questions because he could never answer them, screamed at students for quietly asking a neighbor for a pencil, stuff like that. I don't even remember what my classmate did to set him off, but it was something minor. We were all so done with him. So when he told my classmate to leave, we all did. It felt like some grand act of rebellion, like we were part of something bigger, and honestly, it was great. We got in trouble for it, but we also got the teacher fired. Totally worth it. Story 8. Grade 8 language arts class. To preface this, I was never an aggressive student. If anything, I was the teacher's pet. I was the kind of student who, if a teacher was away for the day, would be mentioned in their notes to the substitute as someone who could assist and give directions. The time, 20-some years ago, shortly after the Columbine shooting, this context is crucial to the story. The place, middle of nowhere, Alberta, a small country school. Our regular teacher was out for the day and had left a note instructing the substitute to ask me if she had any questions about what had been covered. The sub came in, read the note, and opened the teacher's weekly planner. Then she started writing words for our weekly spelling test on the board, except she had opened the wrong week. Instead of the current one, she was using the previous week's list. Being the goody two-shoes that I was, much to my classmates' dismay, Though our teacher would have corrected us when she returned anyway, I politely raised my hand and informed her that I believed she had the wrong page, as we had already covered this material. What happened next, I couldn't make up if I tried. She lost it. She started ranting about how teenagers in general, and me specifically, were a danger to her. She went on about how she didn't know who were her friends and who were her enemies in the class. We had never met this substitute before, and how she had every right to fear for her life. Then she capped it off by saying, "I am the teacher, and if you want to think in my classroom, well, there's the door. You're welcome to leave." I was never a popular kid, so I wasn't expecting one of the popular kids, who was also sometimes my bully, to stand up, pull me to my feet, and then watch as the entire class followed suit. We all walked out. Now, since this was a small country school, there wasn't really anywhere to go. So we just sat in the hallway until the principal came down to chew us out for not being in class. By the start of the next period, the sub was gone. The principal ended up teaching the rest of our teachers' classes for the day. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.